Welcome to this week's video when we're going to take a look at a couple of articles. The articles are something I've been trying to get hold of for ages. There was talk about, the past 2 months around AWS of replacing or getting rid of, 40% of their DevOps engineers. There was an article that was leaked at the time, that was published, that kind of hinted at this really. But it was tucked behind the paywall, so I couldn't get hold of it. What we've done now is had a little look today and come across possibly the same article or similar, where it gives the detail really of what this 40% and the reduction in DevOps engineers is. But more importantly, what's really nice about the article, it goes into the detail. It goes into some of the tooling that they're using, not just they've taken 40% of the jobs, well, reduced 40% of the jobs and replaced it with AI. This touches on a little bit of the tooling that is being used. So I thought it's worth just highlighting it really, and I'll add the links to these articles in the comments below. So it's an article by this engineer called Mohab, or presume is an engineer, talking about AWS firing 40% of their DevOps team and let AI take their jobs. So what does this mean? So it talks about on a Monday, engineers kind of started work. By lunchtime they found out that the access was starting to begin revoked, bit of a telltale sign, and then they found out that obviously they're part of this initiative around cost reduction, but also AI introduction. Now where this article kind of differs, it's not just yes, we were all made redundant, we've all been laid off, and AI is the cause of it. It touches on some of the detail, really. Well, some of the tooling, some of the things behind the scenes. So they're talking about AI, but what does that mean? What are they actually doing? So this touches on it, in some detail, and it's not confirmed, but it seems fairly accurate. And I think over the next coming weeks, we'll start to look at some of these tools and see. Look into them in a little bit more detail. So predictive smarts, this talks about a tool called Q-Pilot, which is around predicting surges. So if you're doing anything around, scaling things up and down, it's very much based on, absolute current values. Now this one is, looking a little bit more kind of got future forward looking, trying to predict things, and certainly an interesting one. I'm certainly looking forward to delving into this Q-Pilot AI to see what this is. Next one around, is cost and bill reduction, always a bit of a sore subject, particularly around AWS, well, any cloud provider really. This one talks about using CloudBot and a Python package, that's doing the rounds on GitHub, which I'll try and track down. And this talks about how it reduced the bills by 19% in one of their reserved instances. Really good comment here around AWS actually hates this one. It got flagged. It'd be interesting to see if this is actually in use. But this talks about it around being able to secure double-digit savings just from a lot of haggling and a lot of automation, particularly around the billing APIs, which is something that AWS has promoted quite a lot. So it's quite interesting to see this, and that, particularly that they don't like it. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what this CloudBot and Python package is, and how it works. Yeah, and of course, yeah, due to the cost savings, it's able to bring users. Not sure that, as it says, AWS is too keen on it. Next one is around PagerGPT AI extension for incident response. So around detecting failed deployments, managing them, being able to publish postmortems, within 3 minutes. This is an interesting one. Certainly the postmortem aspect of it. It's not something I've seen in a lot of the tools that are about. There's a couple there around Kubernetes management, KGPT, Homes GPT, which is a big one, it's backed by, it's been implemented in Azure, for Microsoft and AKS. But I'd certainly be interested in having a look at this one to see, it's talking about with this one, the instant responder that never sleeps. And of course, the difference with some of these tools is, yes, you can run them 24 hours a day. I read something earlier where they talked about you can run them, 20 hours a day. 24, why not? And it's certainly, you think about, finishing work on a Friday and turning up on a Monday. If you've got a team of agents that are busy working over the weekend, even if they're not actually implementing anything, if you come into work on Monday and you've got a list of recommendations, improvements, problems, all which has been automatically, diagnosed and also, communicated to you, that's a massive advantage, really. That's a really, really powerful, positive thing. So in summary, it talks about, what you should do, how to, learn some of these AI ops toolings, how you can understand these and the inner workings of them. I know, just to echo what it's saying in the article, really, is it's about how you orchestrate these. Think of it as you can have a team of agents, or team members, that can carry out a lot of your work. It could be they don't have to actually be making changes or improvements around implementing ideas, even if they're just simply for recommendations. There's no harm in getting to grips and starting to use some of these tools. So it's a very interesting article, and certainly be over the coming weeks we'll take a look at some of the tooling that's mentioned in there, dig into this, and also try and just collaborate it a little bit, so see if there's any other talk around AWS around some of these toolings and whether this is genuine. Even if they're not, some of the tooling mentioned in there certainly seems very impressive and good, so we'll be interested in taking a look at that one. So this article is around the day AI took over my DevOps job and how I'm not worried. It's a really good article where somebody's talking around Cheyenne, the chap's name is, around their experiences of how they implemented some AI tools as part of the role, and the difference that they made in the work. Really, he was able to, troubleshoot, Postgres database connection issues when he'd spent the previous week trying to diagnose them, and it did them, extremely quickly. And he's talking in it about, he makes a joke there around, yes, he's still employed. He's actually better than ever, because of the tools that he's put in place. And that's a key takeaway from it, really. It's, it's ultimately still a person doing the job, but if they have better tools and agents to work on their behalf and for them to coordinate, manage, and steer them, it makes that person ultimately better at their job as well. So, what they looked at, so he said he wasn't too sure about AI at the beginning. ChatGPT could do stuff, yes, but then they looked at, some log analysis stuff. He was spending a lot of time, looking into the logs, trying to diagnose them manually, and he had some tooling looking at the logs already and pinging a recommendation to them. So it looks like, pinged a recommendation as he started, and I was able to get to the bottom of it straight away. So, some errors in Redis, fragmentation, a couple of instances, in the replica setup, in the Redis setup, one of them, talk about restart on one of them, 12 minutes resolution. Wasn't sure of it at first, but ultimately he implemented the action, manually. Himself made the call on it and did that, and within the I think 11 minutes, within the 12 minutes it said, things were all back up and running smooth. and he realised, that it wasn't trying to replace him. It was trying to make him superhuman, to equip him with much better powers, to be able to perform his role. So where did he go from here? So he talks in the article about some of the things that they implemented. So a little bit of log analysis, and this is where it comes in really good. Yes, as humans, yes, we can sit and read logs, we can grep logs, we can search for keywords, but AI can do that much better than us, much better, and also much quicker, and is a lot more accurate. Talking about the relationship between errors, the flow, warning signs in the logs, let's pick up future issues, and that's where it's one of its real strong points, really, and something that I'm going to be targeting to look at, really. My own personal journey. This is an area where I think I need to improve as well. So predictive infrastructure scaling. So he talks about using SageMaker, which is AWS machine learning kind of tooling around predicting traffic. This one talks about, I'm guessing it looks like a website, an e-commerce store, talking about marketing campaigns and seasonal trends and shopping and holiday seasons, things like Black Friday. And he talks about how he's able to use this model to scale their infrastructure, and able to do it proactively, really. A little bit like the first article we looked at, where it talked about scaling infrastructure in advance rather than just based on current load and then waiting for things to kind of to scale out. This very much a shift here around being able to preemptively scale the environments and have them ready. So that's definitely a bit of a theme, really, in these two articles. And then again, similar to the other article, automate your incident response, able to pull things together, run through the run books. I'm sure every kind of engineering team will have sets of run books, whether they call them that or not. Certainly if this happens, you do X, Y, Z. Certainly these are the kind of things that are ideal to be feeding into AI as well. So he talks about where he goes from there. So 6 months into this journey, some of the key areas there around logging, predictive analysis and predictive scaling. We've got the last one, which was around incident response, 3 key areas, and he talks about them here. So pattern recognition at scale. We've never been able to spot the issues in the logs, problem prevention, and enable better decision making, really. It talks about it going on from this, an example around Black Friday. He built a bit of a mission control system coordinating multiple assistants, spikes in traffic, and I'm guessing some of these things that he's mentioning here around the logging, some of the logs, some of the notifications that the tooling is sending out. And this is really good. And if you look, to highlight, double the amount of traffic, well, it's 200%. Detects where it's come from, scaling things, scaling the payment service from the key services, database changes to help improve things, and then also an AI coordinator message at the end where it kind of talks about how things are being resolved. And the other thing I'd highlight here is take a look at the times on them. 11:30 p.m. 11:35 p.m. So there's a lot of decisions in there which are kind of 5 minutes. There's no way even a team of the best humans could get that level of diagnosis in that time. But more importantly, I'm pretty sure they would struggle to have things run smoothly after 5 minutes. And they talk about human intervention. Also, to highlight, and this is just a small thing really, but the other thing, going back to the time, That's 11:30 p.m. at night. Not normally when you have your most experienced, or well, you have all of your team of engineers available when they're working. At that time in the evening, you may have one person on call. It probably may take them more than 5 minutes to get to a computer, to start to even look at these really. So this is a really powerful, very quick turnaround from an issue coming in, out of hours, knew what actions to take, implements them, and within 5 minutes. It also gives you the confirmation. So very, very good example in there really of where things are going, and not just where things are going, where things are at. So they're talking about Black Friday 2024. We've just come through Black Friday 2025, and I'm sure there's already a multiplier of these stories available really. So what they're talking about. So they're talking about what AI does better, what they do better than AI. So I'll touch a little bit on this. So this is around understanding the business context really, making decisions, design decisions, communicating with the stakeholders in the business, at varying levels, not just engineers, all the way up the business, and handling novel, and new situations. Yes, AI is very good at predictable things, things like, traffic patterns, questions about, knowledge, but there's always going to be something out there that's new, something that's changing, whether it's, things going on in the world, that will impact the traffic, to some of these sites. We look at the last couple of years, things like, COVID, wars breaking out, terrorist attacks, depending on what business you're involved in, they could all have a big impact. Whether that's things like, seen a lot of stories around, particularly air travel, air traffic control systems, going down at the moment, so they go down. A lot of airports, flights are restricted. Everyone's rushing to try and book sites, to book alternative flights, within 30 minutes, all of a sudden out of the blue. Things like that are very, very difficult to predict. So it talks about a really good roadmap really on where to go, and it's around looking at the log analysis, automated documentation, monitoring, intelligent automation. And he talks about a little bit how he's really excited about going forward and working alongside AI, and that's very much the way to think of it. As all of these tools and agents are things in your armory that you can build, the best infrastructure engineering team, to carry out this for you, to really step up and improve your game really. He talks about it doesn't make him obsolete, it makes him indispensable in ways that that are new, that he didn't initially think of. It's not AI is coming, it's going to replace DevOps. Again, DevOps and engineering, operations, infrastructure management, it's always evolving, and this is one of the key takeaways I would say is it's important that we as engineers continue to evolve as well going forward. And it's really good couple of articles there which hopefully you found a little bit useful. So thanks very much.